right, we are live. 30 seconds.
Are you the countdown?
Ready to start. Good afternoon, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to our American Businesswomen's Day dialogue event for Junior Achievement of Dallas. Let our president say a few words to open us up.
Good afternoon. I'm Jan Murfield, and I have the pleasure to serve as the president of Junior Achievement of Dallas. We are so glad to have all of you girls on today. I think there's over 220 students, so welcome as we celebrate American Business Women's Day. And thank you, teachers, for bringing your students. Since the 1940s, and that's a long time ago, women have increasingly been playing a larger role in the world of business. So this day was recognized in 1983 by a congressional resolution, and a proclamation was issued by President Ronald Reagan in 1986. It commemorates the important legacy and contributions of the more than 68 million working women and nearly 8 million women business owners. This day celebrates the contributions that we women make in the business world. For the students on the call, we at JA believe that you are capable of doing anything that you want. And we at JA will continue to provide business education, role models, and knowledge about careers to help empower you. So I want to welcome our two speakers, and Keisha, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jan, for welcoming us in. So we have two wonderful history-making women today that'll be talking to you about their experiences and just sharing their wisdom with you guys as business women in America. So I'm going to turn it over to them to give you a little bit of an introduction about what they do, and we'll jump into some question and answers. So I'll go in alphabetical order. Alicia, would you like to go first?
Sure. And since we're just kind of play it by ear, I want to tell you a little bit about myself personally, and then take you on a little bit of a timeline of my career path. And then we'll have other stories available if there's time. So good morning, everyone. My name is Alicia Howell, and I am recently retired from 7-Eleven, where I was Senior Vice President and Chief Accounting Officer. I'm very honored to be here with you today, and I'm excited to share a little bit about me and my career path and any nuggets of wisdom that I've learned along the way throughout my career. On a personal level, I was born in Dallas, but I went to high school in Los Angeles, California. So myself, I can consider myself a little bit of a Texas Valley girl. I can flip between Texas twang and oh my God, Valley girl speak any time you want, depending upon the setting, quite easily. Anyway, I've been living in Dallas for the last 20 years, and I'm married. I'm an empty nester, and our two grown kids are out on their own. And my husband and I are on a mission to travel now that we're both retired. So actually, this year that hasn't really worked out very well. So, but I've learned to adapt, as you'll find out as I talk about my career. There has been a lot of challenges working my way up in the corporate world as a female, and people ask me how I advanced in my career, and I jokingly tell them I am not quite sure. It was quite a whirlwind. There were many jigs and jags and twists and turns and unique and unexpected opportunities, both professionally and personally, that impacted my career. So in retrospect, there were critical junctures along the way where I took a risk or rearranged my priorities using both my head and my gut. And most people don't like to know that, but you do use your gut in business. They usually call it intuition. If you are confident in your abilities, usually the jigs and jags and the twists and turns work out. And if not, it's okay to take a hard U-turn and start again. And this approach has not failed me yet. It's helped me to learn to adapt to any circumstance. And you never know how your experiences, whether good or bad, will shape your future. So, hey, Keisha, can I go through my career path now, or would you like me to keep going?
Yeah, let's go through that when we get to the question and answer. I think that'll be a great time for that. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So, Miss Rodriguez, thank you for that, Alicia. Miss Rodriguez, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Rodrigua Ross. I'm the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the YMCA of Metropolitan Dallas. I currently live in Dallas, but I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. So there's that. Have to navigate. I like Alicia, I can navigate between both. I've been with the YMCA for a little over 20 years now in a number of different roles. And what I can say about my career is when you want to make God laugh, just say you got a plan, right? Because that just never really works out. And you always have to be nimble and you always have to twist and turn. But I've always prided myself in being that person that as soon as someone tells me, or as soon as I notice that there's a place that typically people don't want me to go, that's exactly where I'm going. And as a result, I sit in a role and in a position on the executive team here for a $70 million operation that didn't even exist a year ago. That I was critical in bringing to fruition because it's necessary and it's important. And this is what we should be doing as an organization. And so if I had to kind of sum up my experience in business, is don't let other people write your story, right? Your story is your story, and you get out there and you make it work and believe in your value and what you can contribute, and things will fall into place.
Fantastic. Well, we are happy to meet you ladies and excited to hear more about what your career path has been. I'm going to invite you guys to think back to those first interviews that you were going to when you were trying to enter into the business world. Can you tell us a little bit about what the business culture was like for women when you first started out in your career? Rodrigua, you want to start?
Sure. So, so much in those beginning phases. Number one, many of the times when I would go on interviews or when I would seek to be in positions, they were primarily all in male dominated spaces. I will tell you, the first executive level job that I ever got, I had people flat out tell me, oh, that's really cute, you won't last, only men can do this job, which really made me dig in harder. And I will tell you in spirit and in truth that my track record beat any man that came before me in that particular job. But I will say that, you know, in business, women were expected to be in certain kinds of roles, certain administrative, certain support, right? They weren't seen in many of your thought leader roles. They weren't seen in leadership spaces. The glass ceiling, this whole idea of there being this glass ceiling was a very real concept, you know, and unfortunately, many of the folks that were helping me along the way as I came out of high school, and even as I was going to college with that, which that's a whole different story. They would try to steer me into those spaces because at the time that was the thinking. I was like, these are the places that women inhabit. But I would notice that there would be groups of women who would kind of get together and talk and say, this is not right. Like, we absolutely belong in every space that exists. And those are the women that I really kind of latched onto and learned from, and really wanted to keep in my network and in my crew to help me navigate those spaces. But the world was very different for women. The expectation around parenting and women, the expectation around what a woman could bring, the expectation and some of the stereotypes about women being over emotional in a space, or if you were really strong and assertive, then you were this kind of woman. There were so many narratives that unfortunately were negative about women who were really trying to be professional and move in the space, that if those same attributes were put towards a man, then that man would have been, you know, courageous and brave and been a leader and had all these other things. But as soon as people find out that that gender is female, then the narrative changed.
Thank you, Rodriga. That was great. How about you, Alicia? What was the business culture like for you when you were first starting out?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting to think back. It's now been 30 plus years since I started in accounting. And while we're seeing very positive trends in gender diversity now, and knowing that it's proven that more diversity of thought is expected now, and it makes companies be more successful. Certainly public accounting and the accounting career path just did not have a focus on diversity back in the day. So I've got 4 call outs on women's culture that ultimately had to be overcome. And I think we are doing much better now. But, you know, when I first started, there was no formal flexible work arrangements, kind of, as Rodrigua said. And I had to really forge my own way at a time where I was a single mom early on. I had gone through a divorce, unfortunately, and I ultimately had to establish credibility and trust with my leaders to be able to continue on in a very demanding job, which is public accounting. That was difficult because I was forging my own path. There was no formal arrangements. There was no formal mentorship programs. I'm embarrassed to say, when people ask me, who was your mentor? I didn't have a mentor. That just wasn't a big thing back then, especially women mentoring women. We were trying to just make it. There was no mentoring program. And it was a bit sad in that respect because I felt like I was a bit on my own. There was little diversity at the top in public accounting firms, so there was really no one to look up to. And it sounds like a really whiny story, but I mean, it's who I am and what I came through, and how the challenge was there, and I took opportunity to rise up. And then also, I guess the last thing I'll say is kind of funny. You could not show your own sense of style. I mean, we had to wear these man-like business suits with the little tie and just dowdy, you know, ugly little things. And, you know, I'm so glad now 30 years later that we can have a sense of style in the business world and show that we can be feminine, but also professional.
Thank you so much. So, you know, listening to what you women have shared with us, going into a business type field, you were aware of these types of challenges that may be ahead of you. So what was it that you did maybe back in high school or in college? Walk us through just kind of the thought process that said, I want to take on this challenge full force and enter into these fields that may not be welcoming or accommodating for women.
So a little bit of my background. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Lived on the 7th floor in the projects. I didn't know it was the projects at the time. I thought it was high-rise living. I didn't know. But there were 9 of us, and Black girl coming up in the projects. No one in my family had ever gone to college. No one in my extended family. Many of my family and friends had never even finished high school. And so the narrative that I heard daily was, If you made it past 16 without kids, you were a superstar, right? If you got a job and, you know, just doing the same thing every day, and you weren't on the system, is what they used to call it back in the day, then you were a raging success. And so fairly early on, I had to learn to have this resiliency. Like, you have to have this inner voice that tells you, I don't think what they're telling me is right. I feel like there's something different. And I feel like I can do more. You have to be your first biggest cheerleader, even when the voices around you aren't necessarily validating that. And so I think as I honed that in high school, because coming through those middle school years, you really do believe everything that people tell you. In those formative years, you're really spongy. But in high school, you kind of find your own. You start really saying, no, but I think I can do this. Like, no, I really feel like I can do this. Like, no, if I get this opportunity, I'm going to do this. Like, there's this, arrogant is the wrong word, but there's this bravado that's really wonderful in young people that tells them, no, I can do these things. And so I think that was the turning point for me, when my inner voice told me that there were things that I could do. I stopped being so afraid to put myself in situations. And that was an evolution. It wasn't a switch. It didn't happen overnight. On Friday, I was shy and believed everything. And then on Monday, I just thought I could conquer the world. But it was just this evolution through high school and through college. And I had the opportunity to go to an HBCU. I went to Hampton University, and I will absolutely say that that was transformative for me. That was the first time that I had ever been in a group setting with all African-American folks who were on this journey to being college educated. Many of them came from generations of folks who were college educated, which was very foreign for me. No one I had ever known. And to this day, I'm the only person in my family that's ever gone to college. And so that really started to give me this level of confidence and this level of assuredness that I can do these things. Like I definitely have a value proposition. And you just got to keep that inner voice going. You have to put yourself in the spaces. You have to be courageous. And then that's not to say that everything is going to always work out, because that is not the case. There have been interviews that I completely bombed. There have been jobs that I didn't get. I've gotten fired. I've had to take steps back when my colleagues were taking steps forward, and I knew that I was doing twice the work that they were. There's this intersectionality between race and gender that shows up in my world every day. But you have to have this inner voice and this kind of this stick-to-itiveness that allows you to keep saying, no, I'm going to keep trying. No, I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to build people around me that are going to help and support me. I'm going to make sure that I offer the best version of myself, do the work, get the education, get the exposure, get the networking, and then constantly move. The other thing I had to realize was my race is my race. Once I stopped comparing myself to other people, I think I freed myself up to just run my race. So it's not always about, oh, my friends are doing this, or other people my age were doing that, or I should be here, or everyone seems to be gravitating towards this industry, but I feel a pull in another industry. Run your race. Your goal should be to beat who you were yesterday, not to be who Tom was yesterday, or Sally was, or Deshandra Nikanetane. It's not to beat any of those people. It's to be who you were yesterday, to be a better version of yourself. And I think once I realized that, and I just kept feeding that inner voice that you can do it, you can do it, you belong, you're deserving, then that's when things started to happen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rodriguez. Lots of wonderful notes and tidbits to write on some sticky notes and put all around me in the office. How about you, Alicia? What are some of the things you did to prepare in high school, in college, that help you get ready for what could be perceived as an uphill battle?
Well, honestly, I don't think I knew what I was getting into. I was very naive. Growing up, I had no idea. My mother was an executive at a college, and my dad was too. And so I just saw her and other women that I was around doing what, I always wanted to do, was to achieve a high level in my career. So I actually had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't really prepare myself. And when I went to college, I changed my major 3 different times, and finally settled on accounting because I thought it would provide me the best background and the best base salary. And that sounds kind of shallow, but actually I really enjoyed accounting and liked the work. And so I jumped right in. In fact, though, I've never made a D ever in my entire life, but I made a D on a test at Baylor, and the professor told me, you need to change your major. This is a weeding out course. And I was like, no. So I called my dad and he's like, absolutely not. You're not going to do that. He goes, you just need to study differently. And I did, and I killed it the next time. And so what if I had, thought about what that professor had said to change my career? I would not be here where I was. So I do take, like she said as well, I take that as a challenge. I also just quickly, as I mentioned, that I came back to Texas from the Valley Girl years in LA. I had a professor pull me aside and say, hey, your way of speaking is really not professional. Cut out the likes and the knows, and you're a very smart lady, but you're not going to go very far if you don't polish yourself up a little bit. Actually hurt my feelings. I think I cried a little bit after that, but it was good. It was good advice. And then when I jumped directly into public accounting, which is a dog eat dog world, I was shocked by the amount of, non-diversity in the workplace, and really had to pull myself up with my own bootstraps to figure this out quickly, because I think I love my parents, but they didn't really give me a great sense of what was going to happen in the real world. And but they did, were always rooting for me and helped me with my own self-confidence. So anyway, that's kind of all over the place. Hopefully that helps.
Oh, thank you so much, Alicia. So let me ask you guys this. So often when we talk about women in business, we talk about work-life balance. Can you guys talk about just the challenges between work-life balance and just being a woman in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in on that because I truly had a lot of challenges, as I was mentioning, as a single mom. Um, and now I've heard that the work-life balance is now called work-life integration. I like that better because I guess that would have been a trend the last couple of years, but even more so now. I'm hearing, you're just having to meld everything together, especially in the COVID times. But I think it's really important to set boundaries. And I didn't do that very well starting out because I'm a competitive person who always wanted to get ahead. And I usually compete with myself more than anybody. And so I put in an extreme amount of hours at the expense of my family and my little daughter. And so I ultimately had to figure that out because that was not working. I think it's about, establishing trust and credibility where you work and with your leaders, and then stating what your needs are, and then being able to work maybe from remotely. And now we're all doing that, right? But that wasn't a thing back then. You couldn't work from home. Otherwise you were looked down on, like, where is she at 4 o'clock? Well, you had to go pick up your kid or take her to soccer practice. But on the other hand, I was the mother on the soccer field, where all the other mothers who were not working were sitting in a group, chatting. I was over on the sideline working on my accounting work or on a business call. So sometimes I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere, whether it was at work or on the soccer field. I was always kind of the odd woman out. I think it's something that you have to figure it out. And it's a unique to each individual. And ultimately, if you establish that trust at work and be able to show that you're going to deliver, that's what matters.
Wonderful, wonderful. And thank you for sharing about just in the workplace as a woman and then outside of the workplace as a working woman against other in comparison to other moms that are non-working. Thank you for that. How about you, Rodriga?
I agree 100% with what Alicia is saying. I will add too, I think I've learned over the years a couple of things. Mom guilt is real. So like you're constantly in this conundrum of, am I doing enough for my kids? But you also have this driving desire to be successful in your professional field. And how do you marry both, right? And so over the years, I think I've probably employed all kinds of crazy strategies to kind of help me determine what that balance is, including asking myself, okay, if today was your last day, is this what you really want to be doing? But I stopped asking that question because it made me sad. Like, oh gosh, what if today is my last day? I need to get my hair done. I need to get my nails done, all that kind of stuff, right? So I think though, balance is relative, right? I'm finding now that I can achieve balance a little easier because I really love what I do. And so I'm not really as eager to run away and completely disconnect from it. But there are times when I'm like, okay, I just need to leave that alone and I need to spend more time doing some other things. And so it's this ebb and flow. Like you have to be real with yourself and you have to be fully transparent with the people that you work with and the people that you supervise. You could establish one or two non-negotiables, right? And be very clear about those things and communicate them with the people who are depending on you, the people that you're holding accountable, and the people that are holding you accountable, and whatever those non-negotiables are. So, one could be, I don't miss my baby's sporting events, right? If I have to come in earlier, if I have to work later, if I have to take home work with me, that's the way I'll compensate. But just know when my child is doing this, this, and this, then I'm going to be there as a mom. Another non-negotiable could be, I'm going to take a full-on disconnect vacation with my family XYZ amount of times per year. And that doesn't mean you have to get on a boat or a plane or a train and go far away. Maybe you stay home, but you totally disconnect from something so that you can be fully present in a moment. Just think through what non-negotiables you have. And it can't be a whole long list, 2 or 3 max. And you try to stay true to those and give yourself some grace. There are going to be some weeks and some periods of time where it's everything work. And then there'll be some seasons where you're baking cookies from scratch, or if you don't have children, you decide not to have children, you're off traveling, you're hanging with friends, you're doing all the things that feed your soul. But be real with yourself. Don't always subscribe to other people's ideologies around balance. When you burn out, how much you can take, how much and how far you can go before you hit that brick wall. So being self-aware, setting your few non-negotiables and understanding that it's an ebb and a flow really will help you mentally not beat yourself up, because everyone is doing it. Everyone is trying to figure out that sweet spot and that formula, that gives you the best of both worlds. And if anybody has found that, I will gladly pay them for that information, because I haven't found it yet. It continues to be a struggle.
One other thing I will say is after my 30-year career, my daughter, who's almost 25 now, basically told me a couple of years ago that she was apologized if she had ever made me feel guilty about doing what I do, and that she was incredibly proud of me. And that kind of just took me back, so I think it's all worth it in the end to try to have it all.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, ladies, you guys have shared, just like some wonderful wisdom nuggets and some things about your experiences and just some of those things that we can just write across our heart, right? Like so many things. I think we should open a t-shirt business and just write these things that you guys are saying on there. But I want to look at your personal journeys a little bit to share with these students that are in high school. Many of them are in CTE classes. And so they're in classes preparing to work in business or preparing to work in accounting or marketing. Can you share, how did you climb the ranks in your companies, in your organizations? What were the steps that you took? How did you get from entry level to where you are now?
So I can just just real quickly for a couple minutes here, kind of take you through my career path, which is somewhat interesting if accounting is interesting to you. I graduated from accounting with an accounting degree from Baylor 30 years ago, and I went to work for Ernst & Young, a public accounting firm. And I mentioned before, the accounting profession has struggled with gender diversity in the past, definitely a male-dominated profession. So, and the gender gap grows higher as you climb higher, or grows wider as you climb higher. So for both large firms that I worked for, Ernst & Young and Grant Thornton, I did have very unique opportunities that presented themselves that allowed me to differentiate myself as both a great client salesperson. Yes, you do actually have to sell accounting services, and then also as a competent accountant. So as a part of my career at Ernst & Young, which it was a span of 7 years, not only did I audit companies, but I also spent a little bit of time in the marketing department that because I had actually proved that I could sell business. So that was a real odd opportunity for me, but it allowed me to develop a whole different side of myself, which was my influence and communication skills, which you're thinking, no, I just need to balance the books and accounting. No, you don't. It's all about relationships and influence. And so that was a really cool twist in my career that I point to that ultimately impacted my success along the way. I did jump to Grant Thornton from Ernst & Young. I had a little sabbatical in between in a smaller firm, but Grant Thornton provided a little bit more flexible work arrangements at the time. They seemed to be more flexible. And then I made a decision to jump out of Grant Thornton after a couple of years due to a family choice. And there are things, I mean, I could get into all of it just real quickly, though. I've always made my career decisions based upon what's going on with my family, who is always first. And some people said, why would you throw away your accounting career at Grant Thornton? You were going to be the first audit partner in Dallas, who's a woman, first female partner. And at the time I had to make a choice and move away from that. But ultimately it propelled me into what's called industry, where you're not auditing, but you're doing the accounting for other companies. And I worked at Safety Clean for 5 years, which is an environmental company. I was promoted within a year to VP controller. And then I went to 7-Eleven after 5 years at Safety Clean. And listen, ladies, this is important, for a lesser title so that I could have a more longer runway to move up. And so I went down from a VP controller to a senior director of financial reporting at 7-Eleven because I knew it was a much larger company, a $36 billion company with 10,000 stores, to where I wanted to be controller there. And so throughout that time in 2012, I was promoted to vice president and controller. And all sorts of, I would love to go into more of this. We don't have time, but had 500 people who reported to me, accounted for 10,000 sets of books because we had a special arrangement with our franchisees. So we not only did the corporate books for 7-Eleven, but each individual franchisee. And it was a lot of fun. But ultimately, I ended my career as senior vice president and chief accounting officer, and lots of lessons along the way where people told me I couldn't do things. And like I said, I'm a competitor and I like to prove people wrong. So ultimately, I ended my career as the only senior vice president at the company who was a female. There's more now, but I'm proud of that.
I told you guys when we started, these are history making women. I did tell you guys that. Thank you so much for sharing your career path, Alicia. Rodrigua, you want to share yours?
Sure. So first off, I love to commend Alicia for knowing what you wanted to major in college and then actually stepping into that field after college, because I did not do that. I went to college, and really when I went to college, it was I was just so naive to college and what it really could offer you, because no one in my world had ever gone to college. And I never really talked to anybody who had had that experience, that I was just happy to go to college, right? And so as a result, I picked a major, political science. So my undergrad is in political science, had a great time in that major. But when I graduated, didn't have a clue what I was going to do with that. So then I was like, well, I think my parents want me to be a lawyer. Oh, but my aunt wanted me to work here, but my grandmother said work here. And so I spent a couple of years out of undergrad. I worked in for Chase Bank for a little while. I spent a little bit of time working for an organization. I worked at Ernst & Young for a little while. I worked in all of these different organizations trying to figure out what other people wanted to do for me. And while I went there and I was moderately successful, I could do the jobs and people liked me and they wanted me to stay. I never really could position myself the way I wanted to. And I never really could. If someone asked me the question, what is it that you want to do when you grow up? Or what is it that you want to do in this particular organization? I never really could answer that question. It wasn't until I found the marriage between what I love to do, my personal passion points, what I thought that my education gave me the skill set to do, and what was a value set, what would people pay for, is when I found nonprofit work. And I struggled for years deciding whether or not I should get into nonprofit work, because at the time, number one, there weren't very many women who were in leadership roles in any types of nonprofits that I had seen. There surely weren't any women of color in those spaces. And having worked in a corporate setting, the pay scales at the time was very different if you worked in corporate America as opposed to if you worked for a nonprofit. So I struggled with it for a bit because I was idolizing the money over the passion and the purpose. And so when I figured out a way to, number one, get your skill set together so that no one can discount you for any position anywhere. Make sure that you have the skill set, and that whether that's going to a trade school, whether it's going to a 4-year college, whether it's getting a specific certification, do that for yourself so no one can question whether or not you're able to do a job. Once I started really figuring out exactly what I wanted to do and what communities I wanted to work with and what success would look like for me personally and what it could like for an organization if they employed me, I transitioned into the nonprofit world and my career took off, right? Because now I'm working in my passion. I jump out of bed every day. I'm excited to do this work. I'm okay with giving extra. I don't feel put upon if I'm working late hours or I'm working on the weekends. I actually enjoy being with the people. And then I could unequivocally say, this is what I want to do in this kind of organization. And this is what will happen if you give me this opportunity. And as a result, this is where I sit today, which is by no means my end, because I still have a while. I'm so jealous right now, Alicia. I am not even at retirement age, but you look fabulous. I would have never guessed it. But I still have a few more jumps, but I have created a role that has never existed before in a $70 million organization. I am the only Black woman VP that this organization has had in at least 20 years. I am the only VP level, executive level person doing this kind of work. And I absolutely get to work on my passion every day. I live to be an advocate for marginalized populations, for underserved communities, the voice to the voiceless. I live to say, but did you think of, but how about, well, let's talk to them, right? And, contrary to popular belief, you can be compensated very well in the nonprofit arena for doing what you are skilled to do and making sure that you present yourself as a value proposition for that organization. I know that the work that I do, the persona and the professionalism that I bring, and quite frankly, the population that I represent is a value asset for my organization. And so all of those things coming together really worked out. But it wasn't until I figured that out that I really saw some trajectory. But after college and even through grad school, I got my MBA. I just kind of flailed around a little bit because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so don't think you have to know it as soon as you get in college or as soon as you get out of college. Like I was almost XYZ amount of years old. I'm not going to tell y'all before I realized this is what I want to do. It's okay to do what I want to do and not necessarily what other people are telling me to do. And that's when I saw a true movement.
Wow, what a great, great, great story. So let me ask you ladies this. Have you reached all of the goals that you have for yourself? And what's to come? What does the future hold?
Oh no, I have absolutely not reached. So one goal is I don't have enough shoes, so I'm still working on that. Shoes are my thing. Have not reached that goal yet, so I'm working on that. My ultimate goal is to be the first Black woman CEO in a major nonprofit in a major metropolitan area somewhere in this country. I want to break that ceiling. I want to give young girls like me who are living in urban areas a physical representation that you can do it despite the chatter that may tell you that you can't. I want to lend my lived experiences to helping organizations create more holistic approaches to their work. I want to bring people along and help with development. I want to have the intense dialogue and conversations around eradicating racism in this country and helping major nonprofits lead the way in that discourse. So no, I still have a few doors that I'm waiting to kick in and some more cracks in the ceiling that I'm excited about creating as I get to that next level.
Thank you so much. What about you, Alicia? What's next? What does the future hold?
Well, it's hard to slow down going 150 miles per hour really on a daily basis for the last 30 years. And my goal was in retirement to really focus on my family, volunteerism, and then also be able to utilize my skill, which I'm considered a financial expert for being on a corporate board. And so my goal is to serve on a corporate board, on the board of directors for a couple of companies. And so that takes some time as you begin to network. I'm a new board member at Junior Achievement, which I'm very excited about. But just that's a big deal because you can actually still get paid at the corporate board level to bring your financial expertise. And I always want to keep that. I want to remain relevant, but also have some, some time and some flexibility to do the things that I've always wanted to do.
Wonderful, fantastic. So we have a couple of questions from a few students as we gear up in the last 5 minutes or so. One of our students, Destiny, wants to know, how can we advance in your fields?
I'll take that. So in accounting, I think there's a couple of things. And I'm just going to give it to you straight. You need to go ahead and get that CPA. You can be an accountant without the CPA, but to take it to the highest level, you need to get your CPA. A part of that is also maybe working in a public company, public accounting environment, learning the ropes there, because putting at least 3 to 7 years of public accounting on your resume is going to propel you to do whatever you want to do in the accounting field, because then you can go out and work for a company and lead their accounting team. But you also have to build relationships. You can't just be a good accountant with the technical skills. You have to be well-rounded. You have to be a great communicator, a great presenter, a great influencer, because a lot of things that you do in accounting, you have to tell people no, because there are rules. But you can't always be a no person. If you say no, you have to have options you can bring to the table that ultimately will help them in their career and in their business and operations. So those are the things that, from an accounting perspective, I think will help you in your career.
All right, Destiny, you got a toolbox right there for you. What about you, Rodrigua? How can one advance in the world of nonprofit work?
So the first thing I would say is find your passion point, right? Align yourself with a nonprofit that is doing the work that resonates with you personally, because the energy that you show up with in the work is really going to be beneficial for you, right? It is much easier to advance this work. It is much easier to get into the trenches and deal with the ups and downs of nonprofit work sometimes, if this is really what you want to do. The other thing is you have to tell people what it is that you want to do, right? You have to communicate it that I would like to do this. I would love to have this opportunity. I want to be able to engage with this group or that group or whatever. Like, constantly let people know that you're open to rediscovering or learning or building your skill set or joining this group. The other thing I will also say is that if you know, always look at the job description of the next job you want, so you know what skill sets you need to be building now. And if there are some skill sets in this next job that you want that you don't really feel like you're getting the exposure in your work day, then find some other places to volunteer to help you build that skill set, right? In order for me, when I wanted to be an executive director, I didn't have any experience with managing boards. But in my role at the time, I didn't have access to volunteers. I didn't have access to boards. And so I volunteered in other nonprofits and sat on those boards to really understand how that was nuanced. And then when it was time for me to advance and people asked me the question, well, what would you do? Or how do you engage? I had credible answers and skill sets, because just because you don't necessarily get the knowledge set from work doesn't mean it's not a valuable knowledge set. And then be on the lookout for those opportunities. You know, keep people telling you what the next grader is. Keep engaging, build your network, tell people what it is that you want to do, and look for those opportunities. But I have seen many people languish a bit too long in a space because they're really holding it close about what they want to do, what they feel like their next iteration is. And if people don't know, how can they help you? Or how can they, you know, give you some inside scoop sometimes on what's coming down the pike if they don't really know what it is that you want to do?
Wow. Wow, that has just been, this whole experience has been fantastic. So we are rounding out right at about time. So I want to give you guys the opportunity. I know it seems like 45 minutes just skated by so fast, right? But I would like to give you guys the opportunity just to share. I mean, you guys have shared so much wisdom, but just kind of some parting words with our students as they're getting ready to get out of a class right now. So as they, and something that they can take forward with them. So any last parting words you'd like to share with them?
I'd love to. So I work in a very technical field, and one of the things that has been a success factor of mine, which I was told as I'm retiring and doing my final road shows, is, Alicia, you have always been a very passionate person of what you do. I had an extreme passion to help our stores to ensure that they understood the results, as well as franchisees to make sure that they had accurate financials, and nobody was going to get in my way of achieving those. And I was extremely passionate. So be known for your passion about something. You don't want to be a robotic accountant or a robotic business person. Also, in my last couple of years, I had the ability or opportunity to speak on panels like this, and being authentic and your real you, and doing me is really important. Talking about the things that are our struggles, because people are coming up underneath and behind need to hear that so that they know that they can continue to strive and persevere and keep going. And so be authentic, be an authentic person. And it's okay to have some vulnerability when you're speaking to a crowd or whatever, because they're looking for a person, not a robot. So that's something. Just be known for your passion and be known for your authenticity.
Yeah, Alicia hit it right on the head as my light goes out. That's all, folks. She's absolutely right. Be you. There is no other person in this world that can be like, that's your niche, that's your thing. You can be you. And companies thrive when they have this authentic and diverse thought leadership, people who are contributing, whether it's nonprofit or for profit. Your lived experience is unique. Your perspective is unique. All of it is valuable. Don't use it as a crutch to not learn and grow, because there are absolutely some things that you will have to unlearn as you move through the paces. And then there will be other things that you will have to learn. Like Alicia said, you know, she had a teacher that told her, don't be you, but polish up a little bit. Like, those are all relevant things. But at the core, she is who she is. You are who you are. It's a beautiful thing. Bring that into the spaces, and revel in the fact that no one else can do you better than you can do you. So that's the one thing that I would absolutely agree with, is be authentic.
Well, fantastic. This brings our very first American Businesswomen's Day dialogue to a close. Yay! I cannot thank you guys enough, both Alicia and Rodrigua, for just taking time out of your day to spend time with students and just share your experiences. It was fantastic. This recording will be available on YouTube, so you guys can go back and look. I'll definitely be looking at taking back notes again. So I got some things I need in my life, right? So so thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you to all the students and teachers that participated today. All right,
Guys.
Thanks so much.
righty.